Hello and happy Friday, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this week's new episode of Breakfast with Boom. I'm your host, Mr. BoomStick XL. Ladies and gentlemen, we have an absolutely outstanding, packed show, 90 plus minutes of great conversation to finish off your work week. Hopefully, you're home, you're chilling, and you've already started your Friday. Listen, folks, there is just been such a plethora of breaking news. And it's, you know what? Most of it has been bad news for Sony, great news for Xbox. And the bad news continues to just pour out. We learned yesterday that Jade Raymond, who was the studio founder of Haven Studios, has left PlayStation and left her company behind. They were working on a game called Fairgames. We got a chance to see it a couple of years ago in CG format, and it just did not, win over gamers. And we've been asking what's been going on. And, well, the truth of the matter is this. What's been going on is Sony finds themselves in an absolute tailspin to the point where second half of the show, we are going to be asking the very serious question of what is going on at PlayStation Studios. And it's not good. You got to remember, folks, we're coming off of financials that people, all they worried about was console sales. And you even had the CFO come out and tell you that they're going to have to be more fiscally responsible with first party. I wonder why. Maybe that starts, Korkenstein, with a $400 million bat for Concord, which by the way has been confirmed being even worse than ET was for the Atari 2600. Congratulations, Sony. You suck. How you doing, brother? Good morning.
Yeah, man, it's just been a nonstop whirlwind in this industry, and PlayStation seems to be the brunt of it. Despite all the negativity towards Xbox, there's a lot worse going on at PlayStation, but we'll talk about that soon. I'm doing great, man. Enjoying I'm off today from work.
Nice.
Luckily for the next 3 or 4 days, so I'll just be playing some Doom and Claire Obscure.
Awesome. And you know what? I can't wait to hang out because I'm going to be in LA for the June festivities. So we're going to get a chance to hang out. I'm looking forward to that. Crispy Bomb
on me.
Yeah. Oh, well, yes, absolutely. You know what? I stay away from the Dr. Peppers unless it's the sugar-free one, but I usually go with the ginger ale with a hint of lime. So we'll do the ginger ale because I'm a big ginger ale fan. But and again, it's sugar-free, folks. And I like cake, so let's not get crazy. I'm not Mr. Jacqueline, but I'm trying. Hey, Crispy Bomb, listen, one of the things that Xbox gamers consistently get called or shouted about is copium. And I'm going to have to say this to the PlayStation fans defending Sony. Get off of the copium pipe. Stop sucking that pipe, man. Pause. Copium isn't good for you. Copium is bad. And you have to face reality that right now Sony finds themselves in a massive pickle. Pause. How are you feeling there, Fuzzy Belvedere? I mean, Crispy Bomb.
You always do that. I love it.
I really do. Every time. It's just the worst.
I'm doing good. It's just funny that they told us when we talked about monthly active users that we were just coping.
Yes.
But now Sony's telling you it's like enlightening to us to just kind of laugh that Sony did this to you and showed you that you were wrong, and you saying whatever you said about us. It's just funny. It's going to be a great Friday because I'm going to go see Final Destination Bloodlines later tonight.
Excellent.
So a little nostalgia hit, and the way they're laying it out, it looks like I might have to eventually watch their movies all over again. So get ready to quiver a little bit, because I'm sure there's going to be some interesting scenes in that movie. So it's going to be fun. And after the show, I'll finish downloading and boot up Doom: The Dark Ages. But we got a lot to talk about on the back end that is not good, and then Sony is definitely in a pickle. Pause.
Yeah, no, I mean, listen, I know we're having fun with it, right? We're laughing, but like the whole MAU thing, I find to be very amusing in just a conversation, because MAU is bad. for PlayStation, right? For PlayStation users. It's only about console sales. And yes, they have 77 million consoles out in the wild. That's awesome. That's awesome for Sony. The problem is that their average user buys 2 games. Big deal. 2-3 games a year, and we have that confirmed numbers. Those aren't Mr. Boomstick's numbers. That's the reality of the portion of gamers that spend money on PlayStation games. 2 or 3 games a year, if you're lucky. So PlayStation needs to find a new way to increase MAUs, and that's going to be what we've been talking about for years. And that is they're probably going to end up going third party themselves with certain games. We'll see when that happens, but it's going to happen, folks. Fuzzy Belvedere. The word capping has been used a lot, especially when me and you podcast together, because we gush over the value of Xbox Game Pass, because again, we're both retired guys. Mm-hmm. We both have responsibilities, we both have families, and we understand that we love gaming. It's our main hobby that we do, and we find a way to buy games on other platforms or multiple copies of games, as you've done yourself for the kids, because of Xbox Game Pass, and that's called capping. What I've seen in the last 24 hours from a lot of the PlayStation Nation, I'm talking about like the big voices, and no, we don't do the names here, folks. You know who I'm talking about. They are all capping for Sony, and it's almost embarrassing. But you know what? We're going to get into all of that. How are you feeling this morning, brother? Good morning.
Well, I'm feeling great this morning. Good morning to everyone. Glad to be here with you guys. Yeah, I don't travel the streets of social media as much as I once used to, but every now and then I check to see what the buzz is about, and the fact that people are making excuses for certain Sony executives leaving with no prior notice, meaning fired, not just walking out the door, or maybe she just left. But we'll definitely get into it. But Herman Holtz's job might be at jeopardy at this point, but we'll definitely get into some stuff, man. It's been great for Xbox gamers as far as Doom. Been playing a bit of that, and Claire Obscura is probably going to be Game of the Year this year.
Yep.
Avowed got a roadmap, so it's for Xbox. Yeah, we're doing all right. PlayStation, games as a service. I don't know what they're doing over there, but we'll talk about it.
So the opening salvo, ladies and gentlemen, and we're going to go right back to Corkenstein on this one. Cork, look, Jade Raymond has been a big personality in this industry for the last decade or more. Now, her claim to fame came during the Assassin's Creed days, where she was at Ubisoft. She launched, I believe it was Assassin's Creed Brotherhood, another Assassin's Creed, and I think she helped with Watch Dogs, if I'm not mistaken. And then she left. Now, the one thing I've seen a lot about, especially when it comes to Jade Raymond, is she has not had a hit game produced under her name for a while. And when she started Haven Studios, I for one thought, well, wait a second. She's starting her own studio because she has an idea for what I believed, and I was wrong, a single-player, story-driven game, like Assassin's Creed back in the days was told. So I was very excited. And of course, then it was announced that PlayStation bought her studio. They believed in the game that she was making, and that, for me, which of course I was wrong, led me to believe that, wait a second, if Sony's buying her studio, that means that she is making a story-driven, third-person, over-the-shoulder type of game, because that is what Sony does. And when they do it correctly, it's good gaming, at least for me. Not for everyone. I'm talking about strictly for me. And that wasn't the case. And then we saw a couple of years ago, I think it was in 2023, that Fairgames CG trailer that just looked like Payday with some wacky looking characters. Purple Smoke is about all I remember. And the Fairgames having a $sign as its S, which, by the way, that has changed, which I don't know why they did it, but whatever. And then yesterday, the story broke. And of course, I don't like him as a human, But Jason Schreier broke the story, so I got to give credit where credit is due. Jason Schreier broke the story that Jade Raymond is no longer with PlayStation Studios. And as of today's podcast at 10:12, there has been no explanation from either Jade Raymond herself or Sony. She's gone. The studio still stands for now. I personally think that Fairgames is going to be canceled. We've been talking about this for a while. We've had no updates. And why I think it's going to be canceled is because in this story by Jason Schreier, it was also reported that they had some external testing of the game, and it did not test well either. Cork, let's talk about this, man, because this is another stubbed toe for PlayStation.
Yeah, it's a massively big one. I would say. It's game development's hard. You're never gonna know, especially a game that might. We have no. I can't remember when this game was started. And you might be using some outdated mechanics. Especially in the competitive. The multiplayer world. It's very fickle. So it's constantly it's going up and down with trends and things and stuff like that. So you're not going to land almost every single time. We saw it with Concord. We're seeing it now with Fairlight Games. So I don't know. Maybe it just wasn't good. I don't know, for someone to especially in this high position, to leave so abruptly. It could be two things. She was canned. It could be that, Sony's with the disaster of Concord, they're not taking any chances. They are, tightening the bootstraps. And if you are delivering like you said you are, you're out the door. This could be a Herman Holtz stepping up and just, hey, I got to make an example. And that example was Jade. Or Sony's meddling their hands too much into it. She had autonomy, and now Sony is just like, you need to make this game. This is the game we want you to make. This is the game, you're going to put this mechanic in. You're going to put this. You're going to do this. And she's just like, no, I'm not. I'm out of here. You told me I had freedom of my games, and now I'm being told what game I have to make. I'm done. But yeah, I can't just see somebody like, what, especially in the mid of her first studio, and I guess her first actual studio by her. To just leave like that. It's so abrupt and just out of nowhere, unless Jason reported on it wrong, and maybe this is something that's been happening. I mean, hopefully we'll find out. But I mean, I think we're definitely going to find out this, someone's going to talk. This just doesn't happen like this, and nobody talks or nobody knows what's going on. But yeah, we'll see what's going to come up with it. It's a majorly stub toe for PlayStation. It's just it just sucks, because the people that get hurt here are the gamers, because especially in their consumer base, that they're losing games. They haven't really had any big successful titles as of, Astrobot. That's pretty much it for the last year.
Yeah.
Everything else that's been going out, that's been hitting the top 10 charts, are all Xbox titles. And that's horrible for PlayStation, because the more that Xbox puts on their ecosystem, the worse it is for PlayStation's ecosystem. So it's I just feel bad for PlayStation. They just can't seem to get a step right. I don't know if this is just the fallout from Jim Ryan, of his vision. I liked his vision. I thought, switching over to live service was a very, very smart idea, because that opens up your ecosystem now to multiplat, because you got to get those MAUs in. They just seem to not know what they're doing. Bungie was supposed to be their live service studio, and that just, they didn't have, I guess they didn't do their research, because Bungie's always been a massive, just under, not very well managed studio. They've been just for years. I mean, this is why Xbox didn't want to let them do Destiny, and that's ultimately why they left, because Microsoft had to handhold them and micromanage them. We saw it with Destiny 1 with Activision. Activision let the leash off too much, and now they're missing, expansions. They're delaying stuff. They have to create a paywall service, or a paywall system, Eververse, to keep the funding going. So Activision's happy, and then the game became a FOMO mess. It's just, I don't know how they botched that. But yeah, that's supposed to be their live service studio, and they just dropped the ball. Like you said, with Marathon is not looking that great. What was the other game? Do you guys remember? There was a game that was happening as well during the live beta, Marathon beta, and everyone was like, "This is way better."
What was the name of that? Chat, help us out over here. It was Arc
Arc
Raiders.
Raiders.
Yes,
And
thank you, Crispy. That was excellent. Again, I'm not for me, but the people really dug it, and that kind of put some extra pressure on Bungie, which they weren't already doing well with the reception of Marathon. So yeah, not good.
Not good. I saw more praise and hype about that game than Marathon. I forgot Marathon had a beta. So because of how much I saw, like, all the press and people talking and content being created for it, it was insane. It's just not a good place. And I think we're gonna talk about the MAUs later, right? MAU and stuff like that later.
Yeah, this is gonna be one of those situations where second half of the show is gonna be like, what the is going on in PlayStation? Because a lot of questions have to be asked for sure.
I'll save the rest for that. But yeah, it's definitely because she's a good developer. I think, with her work that she did on Assassin's Creed, that's a legendary, that's a legacy IP.
Yeah.
And she had a hand in making that. So I was excited to see what she could do going forward. But it's just, it's definitely a massively stubbed. That's the big toe. Or no, actually, I would say it hurts worse if you stub your pinky toe, right?
Indeed.
I don't know. So
I've broken that twice. So it does hurt.
Ooh.
I'd say that's a pinky toe stub right there. Because that hurts way worse than a big toe stub. So yeah, we'll see what PlayStation does to course correct, or maybe this was the course correction.
Yeah, I you know what? I don't know. I'm going to be honest with you. I podcast 5 days a week. I read, 5 to 10 articles per day, and this one is as perplexing as it gets. Crispy Bomb, let's bring you in on this. So again, I don't know Jade Raymond personally. I know that I've seen a lot of talk over the last 24 hours about people giving her too much credit for what she produced, and that she hasn't had a hit in years. Look, here's the thing, folks. I understand that this world is all about what have you done for me lately, and she hasn't done a lot of producing. You got to remember, she's moved around a bit. She was at Stadia. That didn't work out. She started her own studio. She was purchased almost, I don't want to say instantly, but right after the studio was announced, I would say in the same year, it was bought by PlayStation. And again, that's just why I thought it was going to be a single player story driven game, simply because that's what she's known for. And Sony buying the studios told me that, okay, they must have saw what it was. They liked it. It's what Sony does. No, it was the start of their gas game conundrum. But again, before we get into what is going on at PlayStation, and I have, folks, when I paint this picture for you, second half of this show, not only is it a rock solid, you can't beat me in court kind of a conversation, but you're going to think of me as a Picasso. That's how good this picture is going to be painted. Because what's going on currently with PlayStation versus what's going on with Xbox, I am unbelievably baffled how anyone could come on the air, on their podcast, in front of a microphone with a camera, and legitimately straight-face say Xbox is dying. It is wild to me. Again, the capping, the copium, whatever you want to say, kids, that's what is going on right now with PlayStation Nation, and it's embarrassing. But let's keep it tight. Let's talk about Jade Raymond. Whether she was politely shown the door or she walked off herself, she walked away from her studio that she founded. This is a pretty big deal and another black eye for Sony. Let's talk about it, brother.
Yeah, I mean, this one was a shocker for me because I felt like, they had such faith in what she was going to make, and you know, her clear, being, basically building this studio to get purchased by Sony. Now I look at it now, through the tea leaves, and realize a lot of these development companies and stuff like that that Sony purchased, it was all during the ABK acquisition period. Like, yes, they're still fighting something, but it's basically over. So I feel like they overspent. They like we've seen some of these studios already get, basically axed, that they purchased during that period. And this is where I say, like, I'm looking at it and it's like, okay, she left or got fired. It doesn't really matter. If she got fired, it's because she wasn't on board with what was happening anyway, or she left because she wasn't on board. And that's the way I look at it. Are they gonna pivot all the way back to only, the games that Boom loves, that, I hit or miss, like, some people love them, some people don't, you know what I mean? Like, and that's fine. I mean, they are well-made games, but they haven't had that in a while. I mean, maybe Ghost of Yotai is gonna, change that narrative when it comes out. I'm sure it'll be a well-made, great game for those type of gamers, but that's not going to help other parts that we're going to talk about. And, maybe she pivoted and said, you know what, the reception wasn't good and we're going to go a little different route. But then Sony's like, no, we want you to make this. Or then Sony's like, no. You keep going with this, and you can clearly see that we've talked about, we're done with this, and you're still doing it. Like, we don't want this, and we bought your studio, deal with it or leave. You know what I mean? Like, we're going to find out more in the end. I mean, somebody's going to speak up that maybe is lower than her, probably at that studio, or they're going to fire somebody else, or they're going to close the studio, or they're going to cancel the game. There's a lot of things that could happen. I mean, I hope the game does come out, because they need everything they have right now. They've canceled so many things that it's ridiculous. But, I'm sure she's going to land on her feet. I think, her pedigree and what she's done is going to lend to some other studio, and, not necessarily, build another studio, but maybe join a studio that needs a little direction help, because, clearly there's going to be some bad blood there. And I wouldn't be surprised if all of a sudden you see her join, like, one of the studios Xbox owns, or, there's other studios that could use some help in certain areas. So we'll see what happens with that. But yeah, I mean, I think mostly this is really highlighting the fact that there are underlying problems, and, we have more to talk about with that. And I'm just going to stay pointed.
I mean, great segue into getting Fuzzy Belvedere in here to get his hot take on this. Look, whenever you have a founding member or person of a studio that they brought to the world, this was Jade Raymond's dream. She made a studio. She put it out there. Sony bought the studio. Why did Sony buy the studio, Fuzzy Belvedere? Because they believed in her vision. They believed in the game that she was trying to make, right? That's why they bought the studio, right? Now, Sony just announced a purchase of a new studio. We're going to get into that, which is why it's going to be a part of the going on at PlayStation second half of the show. But I do want to keep it laser focused with Jade Raymond. Again, why this is, it's such an interesting story. And depending on who you ask, Fuzzy, people are going to say she's given too much credit. I don't believe that. I believe she produced the games that she produced, and they were all hits. And then she hit a bit of a snag. And that snag, after she left Ubisoft, was Stadia. Stadia, she joined to probably make this game, and Stadia folded, right? And then from Stadia, she makes the studio. Studio gets purchased by Sony. Sony and her come to terms. They believe in her vision. And now, as we talked about to open up the show, she walks away from the studio that she founded. Now, the question is, did she walk away or was she asked to leave? And no one is talking about that. So if there is no confirmation, I have to believe that this thing got ugly and it got ugly quick. Right? Now, again, I don't think anyone leaves their baby behind without a fight. And maybe Jason Schreier adds some additional context, because you know how he likes to dig. Even though I think he's a horrible human being, he is a damn good reporter, and he does, do his thing.
Yeah.
Right. So my question to you, like I've already asked Korkenstein and Crispy, is what are your thoughts on this? Because this really did came out of nowhere. Now, you and I have had the conversation of what's been going on with Fairgames. We have not seen it. There's been no updates. There's been no talk about it. Is that going to be the 11th or 12th game that's canceled by PlayStation? It kind of looks that way, because, again, it was reported that they had some external testing and it didn't go over. The actual dev team had concerns for the game.
Yeah.
That's the people making it fuzzy.
Yeah.
Talk about it, man.
Well, to those that are saying she gets too much credit, obviously Sony saw something in her as well as the studio that she created. So to say that she or gets too much credit, then you might as well say the same thing about Bungie to some extent. A studio that PlayStation also acquired because they liked what they saw. They thought that they needed the help for the games as a service model. And we saw what kind of a dumpster fire it was behind the scenes when it came to the organization and some of the leadership there. That could have been the case with Haven, and that would have been, something that they discovered as time progressed. But I don't really think that was the case. Like the whole thing when she went over to Stadia, we know Google is, risk adverse, so they quickly closed the doors when they found out, oh, you got to spend $7 billion to be in this industry. We're out of here, and everything kind of fell from there. And even Kojima's project got canned. Well, or basically Microsoft kind of picked up the pieces on some of those projects and stuff and whatnot. But as far as Jade Raymond's deal, whenever you've either left the studio or bounced from one platform to another, and you create a studio, you're hoping that is going to at least get you to the finish line as far as releasing that game. And whatever negotiations PlayStation had during that process, she felt most comfortable in getting that vision done through their, guidance or their funding more so than anything. And to have a play test that we're hearing about not do so well, I think it's more so a sign that Sony is like, you know what, this games as a service ain't us. It ain't it, or we ain't it when it comes to that. So, whether you want to blame Concord or just in general how fickle that market is when you don't have necessarily the staying power, or even in some cases the IP that kind of carries the games as a service model. It may not bode well. You may be basically throwing money into a pit at that point. And I think Concord kind of, put the nail in the coffin on that, where they had already shortly after Concord canceled like 8 or 9 games. And this one I heard before it was pushed to 2026. So we knew it wasn't looking good as far as the leadership at Sony being confident or having any confidence in this. And even with Marathon, it seems like their confidence is a little shaken as well. So sorry to hear that she's leaving her studio, whether it's being forced out or she walked out, whatever the case may be, it still leaves a hole at that studio. So imagine the visionary behind a project walking out the door or being thrown out the door. What does that say about that project? What do you think that somebody else can kind of pick up the pieces and move forward kind of thing? I mean, within the PlayStation walls, they've already found that they don't like doing stuff like that, because if you look at factions and they realize, oh, we would have to continue supporting this, you would think the easy move would have been just to have another team, possibly one of those that they acquired to be a games as a service or multiplayer type team, kind of pick up those pieces and do the maintenance or the upkeep for the game, and then have Naughty Dog move back to what they do best with the single player story driven narratives and stuff. But
yep.
It's tough to say as far as this early on, as far as what is to come of Fair Game. If I was a betting man, I would say Fair Game is dead in the water.
Yeah.
I'm starting to question whether Marathon actually gets released. I mean, yes, the Bungie name alone and the gun mechanics that they've had in all of their titles is enough to get people in the door, but will they stay? And that's the hardest thing, especially with an extraction shooter. But games as a service, especially ones out there already that are free to play, and it doesn't seem like Sony's willing to do that type of maneuver. It is a tougher spot. Now, Helldivers 2 was kind of the oddity or not the norm, but then again, it's not a PvP, games as a service. It's more of a co-op where there is a longer standing, model that, even though they've had to do some updates to kind of bring some of the community back, that's a model that you have a little bit more leeway, or the community tends to be more patient, as opposed to when it's a strictly PvP or extraction shooter type of thing. You better have all of your ducks in a row when you have it at launch. You might be able to get a stumble here and there, kind of like what Bungie's done in the past, even with Destiny, the original. But yeah, I don't think any amount of confidence in Fair Game was there. And whether it was a matter of, hey, get out of here, or, she was like, I'm out. This isn't what I signed up for, and, try to move on and gather up the pieces from there. It just seems like games as a service is not what Sony has the stomach for. And to be honest, if Xbox is going to be that, 5 out of top 10 games on the platform where, at least half of them have some sort of games as a service component to it, maybe they're happy with that 30% as opposed to taking in 100% from something from one of their studios. But in the grand scheme of things, I don't think that's a watertight plan for them. But we'll see how it pans out. I just feel sorry for her at this point. It would have been nice if she had like an exit clause in that purchase where she at least keeps her Haven studio, although I don't know if she'd be able to, fund the staff or keep the lights on. But we'll see how long that studio remains, or if it's disbanded and, teams or people within those teams are, assigned to other projects and stuff. But time will tell.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that came out of the report, and this is a little odd, is they changed the spelling of Fair Games. And it used to have an S as a $sign. That's been now changed to a regular S. I don't know what that actually does. Is that some sort of I don't know. It's weird. It's the whole thing is weird. But look, I don't. And I will not sign off on that. This woman who has been a part of the industry for over a decade, maybe more. I don't know exactly how many years she's been a part of gaming. I know she was a part of a team that produced some award-winning games that were big for Ubisoft at the time. Has she had a string of bad luck? Sure, she has. But that could be anybody. But we'll see what happens. Whether she lands on her feet at a studio for Xbox or she starts another studio, only time, like Fuzzy was saying, will tell. We will know more in the coming weeks of exactly what happened. I would imagine at some point she's going to break her silence. I don't know if there is any NDA signed in regards to her removal or leaving. Again, this is all really, you got to be a fly on the wall to get this kind of information. But I put it this way. At the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen, it's just another really bad look for Sony. So I want to get into what is going on at PlayStation Studios. And I have a breakdown that is going to completely blow your mind. As a matter of fact, I got to thank Korkenstein for this unbelievable, redonkulous list of games that he said was in his Discord that he sent to me that have been canceled. And my God, the list is as long as my arm, and there might be more to it, but we have to get there. And how we're going to get there is I'm going to break down what's going on for them right now that just makes this whole thing just stink. But before we get there, I'm going to read some of the super chats. We have one here from Stiff Minister. Wow, that's a very odd name, but welcome to the program there, brother. He said that it's being reported that Helldivers 2 is coming for Xbox. I looked that up while I was listening to the gentleman speak on the panel, and I could not find the story that suggested that. The only thing that we did hear came the way of an update from last year. I don't think that is happening. As a matter of fact, one of the things I'm going to talk about is some information coming out of the Helldivers 2 studio, and it's not good for Sony. Again, another just really just ridiculous step on your own D kind of a situation with Sony. We have Do UK now, the broke boy insider drops a very generous $5 super chat and says, there was an article back in 2017 on Gaming Bolt. Sony said it said in the future, MAUs will be more important than console sales, but sales are still important. Listen, I actually remember that, and I will tell you this. Console sales are important, but they're not the metric anymore. This is not 2007. This isn't 2013. This is a digital era age. And the way consoles are selling, especially with the prices going up, and they're all going to go up, this is why, and again, it's very interesting when you think about, if you just take the second to step back and think that maybe Phil Spencer and team was right. Maybe they read the tea leaves and were like, yeah, the multi-plat strategy is going to work. Why? Because you can get MAUs from everywhere. As a matter of fact, thanks to Colt Eastwood, who put this out the other day, the graphic or the numbers between PlayStation and Xbox on MAUs is 5-1. Sony currently has 723 million MAUs. That's a lot of humans. But guess what? It was reported in the third quarter for Xbox that they have over 500 million MAUs. Now, why is that? Is that all for Call of Duty? No, that's most of it is probably mobile from King. But they own King now. That was the whole point of it. So 5-1. Of course, Sony's going to have to change their metrics. They only make so much money on the console sales, right? They want to sell software, and they're just not selling the software like it should be sold, like it did back on the PlayStation 2, 3, and 4 days. It's just not selling like that. The casual audience buys 2 and 3 games per year. That's it. So, again, Sony finds themselves in a pickle. Elijah Vasquez, welcome to the program as always. He has been a channel member for a long 4 months. Dude, thank you so much for the support. He says, let's not forget the years of stolen content and art by Bungie. Not an inspiration, but straight up copy and pasting others' old artwork. Yeah, we're going to, again, this is the start of this next conversation is going to blow your freaking mind. Julia and has been a channel member for 44 months. That is incredible. Thank you so much for the generosity. He says, I'm playing Expedition 33. It's my game of the year so far. Yeah, I almost feel embarrassed where I am in the game. I'm literally at the end of the water level, and that is so early in the game, I should be ashamed of myself. I had to review Doom, so I had to literally stop playing everything. I haven't even been back to Call of Duty in a week, maybe even more, maybe even 10 days since Doom, because I had to review Doom. But I know, not real world problems. I get it, folks. But gentlemen, chat, this is where we get into the conversation of what is going on at Sony and PlayStation Studios. So let me paint this, or let me build this shit sandwich that is PlayStation right now. Okay? You have Concord, $400 million. And I'm not going to stop talking about that because that happened. And it's never going away. And that's one of the biggest disasters in gaming as we know it. I've been gaming for 45 plus years, folks. And that's the biggest F-up I've ever seen. Sony knows it. You know it. PlayStation owners know it. It's just unbelievable. Now, when you tack on to what is going on at Sony, that's the top. That should be the tip of the spear. But that's not the only thing that's going on at Sony. You have a game like Fairgames that ultimately is going to be canceled, right? You have Marathon coming out and getting less buzz than other games that are currently already being played by gamers, right? It's not free to play. It's going to cost, according to Sony, a premium price. We don't know what that price is because Sony isn't talking. But on top of that, on top of Bungie being a complete disaster in leadership, they just got called out publicly by an artist who is claiming that all of the artwork in the level building of the game was based on his work and he wasn't paid a dime. Holy shit, are you kidding me? But wait, this shit sandwich gets worse. So get ready for your taste buds, folks. The Helldivers 2 is a raging success for Sony. Not on their console, on PC. Yes, console players played it. I'm one of them. I bought it, and I also bought DLC, like stuff for it. I spent microtransactions on the game. I bought a cape. I bought a gun. I spent some money. I thought Helldivers was great. I just don't like the controller. I'd rather play with an Xbox controller. I was hoping that game, and it makes sense. Like, why wouldn't you put that game on Xbox? Xbox gamers would lap that up because it's a great freaking game. But guess what, ladies and gentlemen? Arrowhead, the makers of it, folks, they are not doing a sequel to Helldivers 3. And you ask, well, why? Well, because they are leaving to work to do their own thing. And you know what? Let me just bring this up over here, and I gotta find it, folks. I gotta read it verbatim. I had it ready to go, and I'm so mad at myself. So I'm gonna pull the tweet from Okami13. Basically says Helldivers 2 developer Arrowhead Studios will be fully self-publishing their next game. And this is what they had to say, folks. This is how you know, even though they're saying it publicly, but behind the scenes, it didn't go well with Sony leadership. Check this out, folks. It says this, and I quote, "The next game is 100% funded by ourselves. So we'll call 100% of those shots. PlayStation are great. There would be no Helldivers if it wasn't for them, but we're open to working with them again in the future." And that comes the way of Forbes.com. Now, I'm sorry to say, ladies and gentlemen, when you say PlayStation is great, that's PR horseshit. Okay? I can guarantee you that Arrowhead wanted to put Helldivers on Xbox, and like Sony, who doesn't understand business, who is just so stuck in the past, said, block hand, nope, that ain't going over there. We're keeping that as an exclusive. Exclusives matter. Console sales matter. Okay, yeah, good for you. And I mean, think about that for a second, folks. Arrowhead is not working with PlayStation. There's no Helldivers 3. Their biggest gas game success. Concord failure, canceled. Fairgames looks like it's going to get canceled. Marathon limping out the gate, probably going to get delayed, right? And on top of all of that, Gorkenstein, there is no roadmap for PlayStation Studios. As a matter of fact, last time I checked, today was the 16th of May. The June showcase is happening in about 16 days. Do you think that Sony's just going to magically drop a showcase with no games? They don't have anything to show. They literally just had their CFO for their fiscal financials Q3 go on and say that they need to be more fiscally responsible for their first-party studios, basically calling out all of their failures. And you know what? you sent me something, and I want to bring it up. And you know what? If you have it in front of you, Corkenstein, because this is your baby, so I want to hand it off to you. Could you read off all of the failures and cancellation that we've had for PlayStation? Do you have that list in front of you?
Yeah, I got it right here.
Okay, so before I hand the mic over to you folks, there's one last cherry on top of the shit sandwich. So get ready, folks. Taste buds are going to be ruined forever. They announced that Team LFG is making a game codenamed Gummy Bears. That is their answer to their gas game problems. And it's formed up by some Bungie people. Okay, good luck with that. Yeah, I think they're in trouble. Let's break down the list for the chat so they can understand how bad it is at Sony game studios right now, PlayStation Studios.
Yeah, definitely. I want to thank Lucas Tabs for this. I saw it on the Xbox Era Discord and they broke it down. Arrowhead Game Studios Helldivers 2 was released February 2024. So, all right, good. Starting off strong. Ben Studios unannounced gas game canceled 2025. All right, kind of going the wrong way now. Blue Point Games God of War gas game canceled 2025, still declining. Bungie Marathon 2025 ? All right, still not helping. Bungie Payback canceled 2024, still going downhill. Firespite Twisted Metal game gas canceled 2024. It's not looking good. Firewalk Concord released and canceled in 2024. Guerrilla Games Horizon Online title to be determined. So that's just kind of up in the air. Haven Studio Fairgames to be determined. Now that's in that might be on the chopping block. Insomniac game Spider-Man The Great Web canceled. The date was unknown, but still another canceled game. London Studios AAA new IP fantasy multiplayer title canceled because the studio was shuttered 2024. And Naughty Dog The Last of Us Factions Online canceled in 2025. So that's not good. That's a horrible list when you really look at it. And I'm very surprised. This is coming from users. No media has brought this attention so far that I've seen. No one's been like, WTF, you want to use LFG, Sony. What about WTF, with your lineup here?
I mean, Cork. So I think ultimately what is going on in PlayStation Studios really rings clear that there is a real disingenuous thing going on. See, when we talk about social media and something disingenuous happens, are any of us actually surprised, Cork? No. We're like, yeah, it's social media. It's disgusting. But when you have mainstream media writing articles about Xbox is dying, Xbox third party is going to fail, no more consoles. This is from journalists. Now, again, we don't do the names thing because we're not looking to, we're not about that smoke. But, there are consistent articles about Game Pass only being good for one reason. No, there's no reason for consoles. Third party, bad. Microsoft failed. And you just read a list of canceled games that basically are every gas game that they announced except for Helldivers. How is this not ringing the alarm with games media? Because they go right back to, well, they sold 77 million consoles. Good for them. But what about the games? Oh, that's right. Because Xbox is feeding the masses on PlayStation because right now, 5 and 6 of the top 10 selling games are what? Oh, that's right. They're Xbox-owned first-party games. As a matter of fact, you have Horizon 5 outselling Astrobot. That's not good. Any additional context, Cork?
Yeah. I didn't know if you want me to keep going after that on my spiel.
Oh no, please, by all means, just run away with it.
Yeah. Like I said, WTF. What's going on here, PlayStation? You are an absolute mess. And rightfully so. They doubled down. And I know there was the article. Like I said, I'll give credit. I was gonna take. I'll be like, I posted that article, but no, it was Will Broke Boy. Like I said, we have a thing where we always steal each other's comments or ideas. But no, yeah, he posted it. I made that tweet. I tagged you in it. Boom. This is one of the first things I ever said on your channel is that Sony needs to get their stuff together. And if they don't pivot to multi-platform sooner than later, it's just going to get worse for them. We are seeing the just going to get worse for them part. This was what, a year ago now? Over a year ago now. The writing was on the wall. You have to increase. MAUs have always been the metric, but we got this silly little console war going on, and the media decided they're gonna, perpetuate that war with console sales. And console sales were, I'm not gonna say they never mattered, but they weren't the metric that really mattered. That's always been like, this is why Xbox has been dead 9-10 times so far, according to people. But they continue now. I mean, they're in a better place than ever, and they've always sustained. They've always grown because they had a heavy emphasis on live service, even before ABK. They were always a live service and subscription based, and they got people into their ecosystem through multiplayer games, whether it was third party or not. They were able to get people in to their ecosystem and stay there and spend with MTXs or microtransactions. That's always been the more important metric, and especially with Sony when they used these console sales, they use sell in units. That was their metric, sell in.
Yes.
For people that know what that means, that's not actually sold to consumers. That's sold to retailers. So that's not even stuff that they actually have in the consumer's hands, but people were treating it as such. They treated it, shipped versus sold. And that's not a great metric. This is why Xbox stopped using these console sale metrics and releasing that information, because it really didn't matter like the way people thought it did. You could get somebody to spend, $700, $800 on your system to get them into the ecosystem. But then if they're not sustaining that by buying games, by spending time playing multiplayer, by buying microtransactions, by doing subscription services, none of that matters. You just got them for $800. But now look at Xbox when they put their game on PlayStation. Anybody buying microtransactions there, that's money that's coming back. You're spending in the Xbox ecosystem. Gears of War, when that comes out, the Reloaded, anything you buy in that game, even the game itself, is going back to Xbox. You are in the Xbox ecosystem now. That makes a ton more money than getting that person to buy that one $800 console and rarely spending it. Like Boom said, 2 or 3 games. That's not a lot. Especially, when it's a Call of Duty world and Roblox world and Fortnite world and Madden,
Black Hole Games, brother.
Yeah.
That's the name of what those are. The Fortnites, the Apex Legends, they're considered black hole games because what happens is a gamer buys the console, falls in love with this game, and that's all that they play. That's it.
Yep. Yeah. And that just doesn't really matter as much anymore. That matters, but like it doesn't matter in the way if they're not spending in your ecosystem on that. So I just don't know what PlayStation is doing. I think Jim Ryan had a very good plan, live service. That's great, but I don't think they had the catalog of recent IPs that were making them a ton of money. That's why you're seeing a Last of Us 2 or a Last of Us MP, God of War multiplayer. And don't get me wrong, I would have liked this, but it doesn't make sense from a gameplay loop perspective. The Spider-Man games, it gets tedious after a while. Could you imagine having to do the gameplay loop of Spider-Man 2 and Spider-Man 1 over and over and over and over and over? I get tedious. I've beaten both of them, and I liked them, but the gameplay loop does get very tedious after a while, and eventually you're just like, I just want to, finish the story. It's not a great gameplay loop for multiplayer, but they're trying to use these IPs that they've built up and gotten so many sales from for exclusives, And it just doesn't translate well. Like God of War, like what you're just gonna have Kratos yelling "boy" for, it's all you're gonna hear is a 32 multiplayer boy, 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 boy. And, like, come on, that gets old after a while. The gameplay loop isn't there for God of War. It's a fun game, single player game, no doubt, but there isn't a great healthy gameplay loop when it's a single player oriented title. I just can't see it. But you know what? And this is where I think Jim Ryan went wrong, and they doubled down on these major IPs. They have a ton of amazing multiplayer games they could have used, like Twisted Metal. That's just a bone. That's a great game.
They
where
would have
its
got me
gameplay
for
loop
sure.
is
They would've got me.
absolutely perfect. That's absolutely perfect for live service and multiplayer. And they threw that away. SOCOM, they have that. Why not use it? There's tons of games that Sony has in their catalog, but they've spent so much time, double, what is it? Doubling on exclusive first person Hollywood blockbuster IPs. And I know he posted that article, but Sony never followed through with it. They just continue to be doubling down on these IPs that only, were one and dones, and that's it. And this is why Sony's in the position that they are. They need to branch out. They need to get these live service games going, but they've started it way too late. So now they're going to be in a dry period. I would assume, they're banking on Marathon. They were banking on Fairlight Games. They're banking on Project Gummy Bears. I mean, granted, we don't really know much about it. I think it's a bad.
It's probably
name.
just a code name, but
yeah, it's a bad code name.
Yeah,
for sure. But we don't know what their plan is. So I hope Sony figures it out, because it sucks for their consumers. I just wish more people kind of called this out to really push them. They should have been calling them out for years. But you guys played the console war game, and now you're stuck with a console and no games.
Yeah, you know what? Again, it's odd. It's like a 180. Crispy, I want to bring you into the conversation, but I want to lead this conversation for you with some numbers, because we all can have opinions, right? But numbers, well, you really can't argue the numbers. So, of course, I want to give credit where credit is due, like I always do. And this is another post from Ecstasies. It was on May 14th, 2 days ago. Now, obviously, it was announced during Sony's fiscal breakdown for their Q3 that they have 77 million consoles shipped. That's a lot of consoles, right? I don't specifically know if it's on par, a bit under, or a bit above where the PlayStation 4 Pro and PS4 was. I don't have those numbers in front of me, but I'm sure that it's close. So if they've sold 77 million, I think it's safe to assume, again, this is just being fair-minded, that Xbox has about 32 million consoles, Series X and S consoles in the wild, right? Half. Probably a little bit less than half to Sony's 77 million shipped. Okay, that's not surprising. That's how it was with the Xbox One generation. It was, Sony had double, and they sold their 30, 40 million consoles. Fine, whatever. But this is where the rubber hits the road as to who is making more money. And ultimately, I don't give a shit, because they're not filling my coffers. But if we're talking about Xbox dead versus PlayStation alive, well, this can just shut these knuckleheads up. So this is what Ecstasies tweeted. Based on the latest reports, Xbox generates more revenue than PlayStation from software, content, and services. And here's the breakdown. PlayStation, through software, content, services, and console sales, made $5.23 billion with a B. Interestingly enough, the dead Xbox, the zombified Xbox, I think the Xbox has died more than Jason Voorhees, and I know that Fuzzy will laugh at that one, right?
Oh, I do too.
Okay, so check this out. So again, let's be clear with the numbers. PlayStation, double the amount of Xbox consoles, right? Because console sales matter. At least that's what they told us. 5.23 billion. In the same time frame, well, look at that. Xbox in the US, $5.39 billion. So is it more by a lot? No, but it's more nonetheless. And that is all you need to know about whether or not Phil Spencer was right. Now, granted, OGs like us still don't like the idea of Sony getting Xbox games. We're always going to be that way. But the truth of the matter is who is making more money? Now, again, this is not me capping for the $3.5 trillion company because they don't give me shit, and that's fine. But if we're talking numbers about one company dead and the other company winning, we just broke down exactly why Sony is a complete shit show. Let's get your thoughts.
Well, I mean, here's the worst part of this is that Sony, they copy Xbox in so many aspects, but they actually didn't learn from what Xbox did. Remember, I mean, Xbox was all about multiplayer for a period of time. And that's all they had. And what did everybody do? They say, okay, like, can we have some single player games, please? Come on. You know what I mean? Like, and then all of a sudden, these past couple of years, more and more single player games come out. Now, I am going to attribute that to the fact that they can see that the MAU can be a part of multiple things. And the one underlying part has been Game Pass. And, just because somebody has Game Pass doesn't necessarily mean that they're not going to spend money on the back end on something, microtransaction or a DLC or something like that. You get the game in the service. That doesn't necessarily, which, I mean, we got to give Xbox a little credit. A lot of these updates and everything else are free, which is nice. Pro consumer. Okay. Even though I gave them, a couple weeks ago, gave them a lot of crap about, raising the price of the consoles. I think they just see an opportunity, which I don't like, but also business hat on. I say, okay, I understand. The problem is that Sony's talking out of both sides of their mouth right now. And I've called Xbox out on this years ago. You want MAUs, but you don't want to develop games on other consoles that would support games that are games as a service games like the ones you canceled. For example, the most egregious one, because there's nothing like it out right now, at least, that hits the tea leaves, is Twisted Metal. Okay, like Twisted Metal could be, and especially because it was a successful series, people would be interested in that. And I
There's
think
also a TV show which was really
well.
good.
That's what I'm saying. Is a series TV show. That's what I'm saying. Is that they had a successful TV series. That's what I should have said. And really, there was nothing there. And like you can go back to Twisted Metal Black. I mean, we like old games, but we also, like as old as that, like you could just remake that and then throw some microtransactions and some multiplayer in there. And I'm sure, I mean, for the newer people, it would be an awesome experience. And that's where I say, like, I think they, they're trying to make these gas games like this new hotness. And really they're like, most of them seem to be copying games that have already been out and already have taken the zeitgeist in some way. And now they've canceled everything. And it's like, Spider-Man, for example, like that, like, okay, I could play multiplayer with somebody. That would be actually cool. You know what I mean? Because there's so many different Spider-Mans in the Spider-Verse. You know what I'm saying? So you could, play as one or the other, have different, move sets, like really like combine into something, even if it's just 2-player instead of, just single player. That would be amazing. But, I think they had such a fall with Concord that they don't know what to do anymore. And, to see this, the Jade Raymond thing and all these other things that have transpired, like how Marathon is coming out. And I'll tell you right now, Marathon might be saved because it's Bungie and Xbox gamers are probably going to purchase it. Okay. And it's going on Xbox. And the one thing I want to say is that, for them to keep canceling, or at least it's looking like they're going to, Fairgames is not going to be anything unless they're planning on releasing it on Xbox and PC, is that they have a conundrum because now they're seeing all these old games that Xbox is dropping on PlayStation that are successful. And, like I said, I think Gears of War Reloaded is absolutely going to just obliterate sales, like compared to any other Xbox game that's went on PlayStation, because there are people that have never played a Gears of War game. So what they're doing is taking those older IP and they're saying, okay, here you go. And like, yes, you're getting, you're getting Indiana Jones, you're getting some things, but it seems like those older IP are hitting good on there. And that's where I say, okay, you've developed a lot of your older IP, like a Days Gone, Spider-Man, stuff like that, to go to PC. I'm sure it's not as hard as people think to go to Xbox from there. And this is where I say, I understand that people think that, Sony's just completely old school, but it seems like they're talking like they're going to adapt, and they're preparing you for it, because if they're old school enough, but not too new school, they don't know how to make a gas game, but they can still take their old IP and release it on another console, even Nintendo as well, when the Switch 2 comes out. You understand what I'm saying? So they could still be old school in their own way. Like, okay, we just develop for these platforms and put it on PC first, and then PC can extend into other parts, like Xbox, which it's pretty simple and from what I've seen for them to do that. And then you say, okay, like we can get that revenue there. Like they probably see, what Forza is selling, even though it's older, or the probably the pre-orders on Gears of War Reloaded, what they're seeing, because they can see those numbers because they're there in front of them. And they can go and say, you know what, if we release Spider-Man on Xbox, how much would it sell? And we've already developed it. Like, yes, it would be a little porting thing. I mean, how much would that cost compared to losing $400 million on Concord? Pennies, probably.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things, like, you got to look at it in a perspective to say they are changing leadership so much that Sony themselves is not happy with the PlayStation division. And they are putting people in there that are probably were, a part of the Sony enterprise in itself. And they're putting them into the PlayStation enterprise as well. And they're involving them because at the end of the day, they are a publicly traded company and they want to make money. And they also want their shareholders to invest in them. And they need to figure that out, because right now, all I see is negative news. And not to say that, I truly believe, I know the rumors are out there. If they raise that price, we're going to see people have meltdowns. I'm just saying, because this continues the negative news and Court, you went down the list. The negative news is not good, but to kill everything that is, a multiplayer game, like they're doing, gas game, whatever you want to call it, is horrible. And we've called Xbox, like Xbox was just like all about multiplayer. And it's like, okay, like we do like single player games, Xbox, hello. And then like all of a sudden now we're getting like, How many single player games do you get this year? Tons, right? But
A lot.
they have that back end that, hey, it's in Game Pass. Here you go. You know what I mean? So then they're still getting their revenue in one way or another. So you look at that and you say, okay, like they can drop single player games now because it just keeps people continuing to subscribe to the service.
Yep.
What does Sony have in the same aspect? I mean, we barely see anything day and date over there. I mean, what, Stray and what, a couple other games, like, you know, and they're
first party stuff though, dude. And that's
they take it out usually. Like they
do.
eventually take it out, and that makes me not say, oh, I want to play, because like if I'm going to pay the $18, like I would like some kind of incentive. And if you're going to take some of your games out that I've never played or want to play, why would I subscribe? Like it's a constant battle in there right now. And you could almost see it, like just with, you know, Jade, whatever, she left or she got fired. And then, you know, like the way Bungie's acting and all these other things and how they're like, you know, they're melting, you know, developers and studios they bought into their whole entire, like, you know, like they're trying to make one thing. And it's like, but how many people are gonna be like, nah, I'm not down for this, I'm gonna leave. And then you lose good people that have great ideas. Well, you have Xbox sitting here saying, make what you want. If it's successful, we'll continue to work with you, especially if it's a second party. Or make what you want. We believe in you. We've seen what you're developing. It's something different. That's what we need in our service. This is the conundrum that Sony's in. They don't have that service that really highlights these games that, you know, they might sell 10, 15 million, but that doesn't mean that's how much of your player base when it comes to your console. That's why I think they're going to branch out, and you're going to see more and more go day and date into PC, but also you're going to see some of these older games come to Xbox or Nintendo or both. So don't be surprised when it happens, because when it does, I am going to enjoy the meltdowns. Okay? Because I have sat here and I've stood, I want Gears to live. Gears of War Reloaded. Hey, you got the multiplayer. Awesome. I get to stomp some stands. Okay. That's the point. Like there's other elements involved. And you know, when you take an older game, like imagine Last of Us coming to Xbox for all those people that never got a PlayStation. I would play it. Why not? It's you'd sell 1 million. You know, what's the port cost? Like look through that. Like they have money people in there that can do the math. And I'm telling you, it's going to happen. It's going to happen, I'd say, in the next 3 years. It's going to happen. And then the meltdowns are going to be absolutely glorious on X, and it's just going to be hilarious. But that's really all I could say.
Well, I am going to say this, folks. If you did not know, besides being a big Chiefs fan, he's a receipt keeper. And he has receipts for years and days and months. So if you did say something egregious, get ready for him to drop the bomb on you, Crispy bomb. So there you go. But, you know, Fuzzy Belvedere, I want to bring you in. And, of course, what is going on with PlayStation Studios. Well, here's some more interesting stats. Because I'm a stat guy. Like, we can all have our opinions. You know, you could like one box or I like another one, or this platform is for me and that one's not. That's great. But here's some interesting stats. Now, this comes the way of an amazing community member on Twitter, Snap Blast Play. Basically, at Snap Blast Play, he puts out usual Xbox, pro Xbox commentary. But this one is very interesting. So he goes on to show a list of Xbox and PlayStation multiplayer games. So quickly, because it's such a small list, PlayStation had Concord and Marathon, first party. Fairgames, we don't know, and that's another one on the list. We don't know what's happening with that. If you want to, again, if you're counting straws because you have no straws, you have nothing else to count. And PlayStation doesn't really have a lot to count when it comes to multiplayer. You can throw in MLB The Show if you want. Sure, why not? Right? But then you go over to Xbox, and this list is as long as my arm. You got Call of Duty, Minecraft, Forza, Diablo, Sea of Thieves, Halo, Grounded, Overwatch, WoW, Gears, and Fallout. And there are actually some stuff missing, like Elder Scrolls Online, right? That's also a part of the that he forgot to add to it. And you know what's even more interesting? Most of these games are available on PlayStation. Call of Duty is, Minecraft is, Forza, Diablo, Grounded, Sea of Thieves, Overwatch, Gears eventually, Fallout, 76 is available, and obviously, like I said, Elder Scrolls. And this this failure of leadership, failure of direction, failure of just keeping all of your eggs in one basket for Sony is promptly on display right now. And again, when you hearken back to what the CFO said, he didn't say that they 100% corrected the problem. He literally said, we're halfway there, and I think we're making strides. Halfway there? Are you kidding me? Listen, I don't know and if anyone else is going to agree with me on ringing the bell for Sony, but again, this goes right back to the games media. How in the freaking world, Fuzzy Belvedere, are they not asking what the is going on with PlayStation? Because, I mean, we're just podcasters. And for the last, I don't know, 70-ish minutes, we have broken down what is broken at PlayStation, what's broken at Sony. And it's being ignored. It's being ignored by social media. That's not a surprise, but it's being ignored by games media. And it's bonkers that some of the games media in just recent days and weeks wrote about Xbox only being, good for Game Pass, or Xbox only being a good for third party, no hardware in the future. It has been an unbelievable laugh riot. I want to get your thoughts on this.
Yeah, I think the gaming media is afraid to speak bad of their preferred platform just for the fact that Sony is the type that will blacklist you. Like, you don't give them a nice review, you might not get codes, the next title release. The other thing is, I know Sony and as well as Nintendo tend to get a little bit more of a grace period. Like, when they have their rough spots, they're like, oh, well, they did greatness in the past, so it'll happen again. Like, but then again, we see the same thought process go for Mass Effect, and we've seen how that's worked out with BioWare in comparison to some of their previous hits and things. So I think the big thing when it comes to Sony, me as a PlayStation 5 owner, I want to see either Gran Turismo 8 or put Gran Turismo 7 on PC, because even though the Pro exists, PC is still going to be the ultimate platform as far as for graphical fidelity, as well as mods and customization and things. But if they choose not to do that, I would like to see something like SOCOM. If they're having difficulty with games as a service, to me, SOCOM is kind of the easy, low-hanging fruit kind of thing. But even if you look at the ones that was on the list that Korkenstein mentioned, you have factions. Like, all right, so I don't know if people remember, there was a game that was kind of a scam called, I think, The Day Before. It looked like a little bit of The Last of Us meets The Division, and it was like the most wishlisted game in history, I think, on Steam for a bit. And because of that, if that team just looked at the fervor for that game, even though it didn't deliver, that studio didn't deliver or anything along those lines, I would say that was a perfect example of something that they could have done when it came to doing a game like Factions. So they had what would be a hit. Sure, it's not a guarantee. And sure, they're better at, Naughty Dog is better at like doing single player stories, but how hard would it be for them to spin up a team that's just focused on the support aspect for multiplayer? Like, keep your primary devs that are working on single player story narratives on that, and then build a team like after the bones are done for Factions. bring that other team in to continue doing the support, the updates, and so forth. And every so often have a meeting, with people like Drucker and stuff like that. So that way you could have I don't know, like an update to keep it within the same story vein that they would like to keep The Last of Us. The Spider-Man game was another one that seems like a no-brainer that should have been a hit for them. Like from a licensing standpoint, maybe the cost of licensing may not have been as lucrative, but we see how well Rivals is doing. And some people are like, well, Marvel Rivals is only doing well because of the IP. Well, that's part of it. If you have that type of a big IP to get your customer base or fan base in the door, that's at least the start of it. But then the other half is being able to support the game as well as continuously innovate on the game when it comes to what the player base may want or what they're willing to tolerate. Perfect example, if you look over at Overwatch, they pretty much had that mantle for a long time, and Marvel Rivals has kind of made them kind of look back within themselves and make some adjustments to be somewhat similar to Marvel Rivals. I mean, they always had the character design down pat, something that Concord kind of missed out on. But it just feels weird that Sony is having such a hard time, especially like I think Crispy had made mention earlier, like PlayStation tends to copy Xbox in many ways, whether it's the online services or trophies versus achievements and a whole list of other things. So with that being said, that should have been an example for them to look at what Xbox has been doing for decades now. Well, not decades, but they've been around for 20 years, but
25 years next year. Yeah.
They always, like, even if they put something that's a dud, they work at it, much like even Ubisoft has done with like Rainbow Six. They will keep on working at it, listening to the community, making the adjustments and sticking behind it and seeing things through and watching it turn around. Like Sea of Thieves, it had its fan base right off rip. It kind of lulled a bit, something similar to the way Destiny did because of the content gap from its release up until like year one. And then after that, they've pretty much been on a rip, even doing partnerships with Disney for the Pirates of the Caribbean DLC and stuff like that. So there's a roadmap out there for Sony to follow, and it's right across the street over at Xbox, basically. And any other time they're looking over there, copying notes or copying the homework, they haven't copied quite the right formula for, their for Game Pass and for example's sake, but they still have their fan base that enjoys PS Plus, even though you're paying for a lot of the older content behind the highest paywall, and then you're not quite getting the upgrades of boosted frames or HDR or modern I guess remastering or reworking that you would see as a free upgrade within the walls of Xbox. And instead they do like a $10 upcharge for some of that stuff, but they haven't done it with their older titles. So it's just weird that Sony is not who we know them to be normally, like releasing 2 to 3 single player first party games that are great story driven narratives that are visually stunning, that are talk of or in the game of the year conversation. Like maybe Ghost of Yotai. Hopefully Ghost of Yotai will be that for them this year, but next year, is Fairgames even a thing? And to my understanding, I don't think Intergalactic is next year. I think that's a 2027.
That's been pushed into 2027. That's been confirmed. Yeah. And
then hopefully we get Wolverine next year. I mean, the PC exclusive that leaked out months ago. But no, in the grand scheme of things, I think Sony is like, either they thought that they could coast off of their name, which Xbox has done that from the 360 to the Xbox One to some extent. But now we're seeing that kind of same pattern with PlayStation from PS4 to PS5. Sure, they have hardware sales, and that's great. That's basically a piece of hardware in the living room, so that way you can sell more software. But if you're the box of the casual, like everybody's mentioned, you're the casual that's only buying maybe 2 titles a year, 3 if they're lucky, one being COD, the other one being either NBA 2K or being Madden or FC football or whatever kind of thing. They have to figure out something to kind of, I wouldn't say turn things around, but it does seem like they're heading down a path that doesn't look good long term. Like games as a service, they were all in until they weren't. It seems like every other week we hear of a cancellation or a delay or some sort of adjustment. Marathon is hopefully that going to be that spark of hope for them. I mean, Helldivers 2, great multiplayer game in the sense of co-op. I don't know why Sony is opposed to money. It would seem like if they did put that on Xbox, that would be an easy 1 million to 2 million sales that they would garner, that they're probably not going to garner any other way. I mean, it's what Xbox is doing. They were able to get more sales of Forza Horizon 5. It's a 4 or 5 year old game. Putting it over on that platform to sell 1 million right off the gate, if not more. I mean, I would say that's worth the porting costs. That's worth the effort. And now you've given the taste of those players over there that will be looking for Forza Horizon 6. Now, my game plan would be to keep that exclusive on the box, but that's not in the cards the way Xbox is moving at the current moment. But you do now have a fan base that was never probably willing or able to test your software or try that game, that are probably now going to be hooked for the next sequel. And that's something that Sony really needs to look at within their older catalog and start taking into consideration. Like, there are so many titles, whether it's Spider-Man, and considering licensing, I would say it's probably worthwhile, especially if they're trying to build up a budget for Spider-Man 3. Why not? I mean, I know it sounds cruel to say, hey, let the Xbox players help with that funding, but to some extent, the PlayStation players are kind of doing that for us, Forza Horizon fans. So I'm surprised they're not taking those same measures, but it is what it is. Hopefully they'll learn that, being on multiple platforms beyond PC is a lucrative venture for them to try. I mean, instead of trying games like, what was that, Horizon Lego? I mean, they probably should have waited until Switch 2 for something like that. But if you're going to experiment with a game, I would say something like Days Gone isn't a bad idea. Or when it comes to Horizon Forbidden West or Days or Zero Dawn or something along those lines. I mean, they should, at this point, if they can't get their first party to produce or churn out titles on a regular basis or a more consistent basis to what the PS4 era was used to, then they need to definitely change something before they find themselves with 1 to 2 games and that's about all that they're putting out in the year, or money having all these third parties while their first party studios are trying to crank out a story once every couple of years kind of thing. Something has to change, and I'm surprised the gaming media isn't calling it out, or even some of the loyal PlayStation fan base. It's like at this point, if they're more hyped for Xbox games coming over there, that should be all that we know, or all that we need to look at as far as how far behind or how desolate or dry of a spell they're having over at PlayStation at this point. But yeah, that's my 2 cents.
And it's great 2 cents, and it's a 2 cents that Sony needs, because they don't have any first party games to sell, so they'll take it. Look, at the end of the day, Sony is in a bit of a tailspin. I think that their fiscal conversation that they made public really does paint the picture. Is it dire? Is the studio dying? Are they closing up shops? No, they're the number 7th most recognized brand in the world. PlayStation sells consoles, but it's got to be more than that, and they know that. Again, I'm a numbers guy, so Helldivers 2, if you didn't know, cost between $50 and $100 million to make. Right? Okay, that's a lot of money, but that is relatively small. Interestingly enough, you had made mention of Spider-Man 2. Spider-Man 2 cost $315 million to develop. That is almost 3 times the amount. And guess what? Fun fact. Helldivers 2, as of November, sold 15 million copies across PS5 and PC. Now, mostly on PC, but PlayStation 5 gamers like myself stood up and bought the game. Spider-Man 2, I think it's like 10 million, something like that. So it got outsold. Spider-Man, the very expensive licensed IP that they have to give 35% of every sale to Marvel and Disney. For every copy they sell, whether it be in a bundle or not, 35% goes to Marvel. And Helldivers, from a small team, which, by the way, is no longer working with PlayStation. They've walked away. Their next game, they're paying for because they're going to want to put it everywhere. That is big trouble for Sony. The one success that they had, they effed up by not putting that game on Xbox, and it would have sold gangbusters. And I'm sure Arrowhead Studios tried their damnedest to get that game on Xbox. And the block hand, like Sony likes to do, came out and said, no dice. It's got to stay here because PlayStation exclusives matter. Well, you know what? Here's the numbers, folks. They don't lie. But let me just catch up on Super Chats, and we will get everyone out of here so you can start.
I was going to say real
something?
quick, Boom.
Yeah,
especially remember the PSN fiasco that happened with that game that pissed off the whole entire community.
Yes, dude. Yep.
That was the time for them to be like, yeah, you know what? We need a secondary player base, Xbox. And for them to still tell them no and essentially tell them, we're going to kill your game, basically. We're not going to support you on this. I don't blame them for leaving.
Yeah, I mean that's a great point. That was a fiasco. And again, you need this. You need the Sony sign-in PSN thing. Countries that didn't have PSN couldn't play the game. They had to get refunds. Just a mess. Sony has been a mess for years. And again, it just goes right back to really, if we're being real about it, who's winning, who's losing. Like I said, OGs like me, like Fuzzy, like Crispy Bomb. We don't like the idea that they have this multi-plat strategy, but ultimately, you know what? At the end of the day, when you sit back and you look at the numbers, Phil Spencer was right. And again, we don't like it, but he was ultimately right to do what he's doing. And that's why the whole play anywhere, this is an Xbox everywhere initiative that they're doing that people scoffed at, that people made fun of, is ultimately why they have 500 million MAUs as opposed to Sony's 123 million. And then, you know what? That just goes to show you that the people running the ship know what they're doing. And maybe at Sony, not so much. But let me catch up on Super Chats here. We have Sir Riffs a lot, who's been a channel member for a whopping 4 months. So thank you so much for that. He says, boom. Did you mention the new Dark Outlaw Games studio led by former Treyarch and Call of Duty developer? That game was announced and canceled in 2024. Was that going to be a Sony exclusive? I don't remember that one, believe it or not. I'll look into it. And again, if that was going to be a PlayStation exclusive, yikes. Another one bites the dust. Do you, K Now, the Broke Boy Insider, drops an additional very generous $5 Super Chat. It says, PS users, the sell-in method with all their consoles, basically they are reported as sold when they are sent to retailers. Other companies do this as well. Yeah, again, that's a great point. That was stolen. Sorry. But it's true. Sell-in means you've sold to retailers. But we know how social media is. Every shipped Xbox, every shipped Switch, every shipped PlayStation apparently considers as a sale, even though a lot of these PlayStations that were shipped have not even been turned on. But again, 77 million is a good number for them. We have JD Gamer drops a very generous $5 Super Chat. And JD Gamer, welcome back, brother, and thank you so much for the generosity. He says, remember when journos asked the question daily, would Xbox ruin Bethesda or ABK with their mismanagement? Well, it looks like PlayStation is the king of mismanagement. That's a great point, and indeed one that has been ignored by the wonderful media who just loves to, again, we understand what the business is. It's clicks. Anytime they need some clicks, shit on Xbox, and guess what? People just line up at the door. It's unbelievable. Yodani Kuzada drops a very generous $10 Super Chat and said, sucks that there isn't a June Xbox event, but I'm grateful to have met you last year. Boom. Happy Friday to you, Fuzzy, and the gang. Brother, it was, again, I met so many people, and that's the fun part. That is why I spend the money to go to these events. Now, here's the thing. There isn't an official Xbox watch, showcase that we could be in person, though thanks to Ben Kenobi and Hargeet Chani and several others, there is going to be a community fan fest watch party I will be out there for Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And I'm going to try, obviously I'm going to help them, put the event together when I get there. But that's going to be, again, it's a watch party for the fans, by the fans. And that is all thanks to the unbelievable, tireless work of Ben Kenobi, that blue number, Holly, and of course, Hargeet Chani. It's going to be fun. And it's going to be, I know that they had raffles going on for, to get the fans in. That raffle is done. Everyone that did win should be notified already or notified the next day or two. So check your emails, especially if you, you registered to try and win one of the tickets. But yeah, maybe next year. But I really think, Yodani, that this community fan fest is something that they're looking to do each and every year, even though Microsoft is kind of signing off on it from what I understand. A lot of their bigs are going to be there. They're going to make an appearance. So they're working with the community to get this done. I really wish they would have done an official one like they did last year, but the community event I think is just as fun, to be honest with you. And there's going to be prizes, giveaways, and there's going to be, snacks and drinks there. And of course, everything is going to be free for anyone that gets in. Decided D drops a very generous $5 super chat and says, wait a minute, we forgot about the game Baby Steps. Oh my God, Sony is saved. I forgot about that. What happened to Baby Steps? Wow. That is a great point. Decided D, shout out to you, man. I forgot all about that game, and I believe Sony did as well. Game Seeker has gifted one Double Barrel Gaming membership. Brother, that is very kind of you. Thank you so much. Please, if you did get the membership that Game Seeker donated, thank this man. Appreciate that very much. Torrance Hud Zero Hudson in the chat drops a very generous $5 super chat. And he goes on to say, gaming will find itself in a dark place if prices rise and players buy less. Game Pass is great, but it's only one ecosystem. By the way, Boom, see you in LA in June. Oh, that's going to be awesome. I can't wait to meet you in person. I'm looking forward to that, brother. That's going to be awesome. Decado drops a very generous $5 super chat. Decado goes on to say, I think micromanagement by Sony proper is affecting PlayStation more than anything. I mean, that could be certainly what it is, but I think they need it. It's just like the Wild West over there. And look what's going on with Bungie. Like, Bungie has Marathon coming out. The previews, the alpha wasn't good, right? A lot of people did not like what they saw. The world is very bland. And then, of course, now that you have that, you have, Arc Raiders comes out, steals its thunder. Everyone's talking about Arc Raiders. Apparently, it's a much better game. And then if that wasn't bad enough for Bungie, they get shouted out publicly by an artist that they stole their work. Like, wow, dude, Bungie is a complete shit show right now. It really is. And that all falls on Sony leadership. So maybe you might be onto something. We also have here, let's see, Game Seeker drops an additional very generous $5 super chat. Says Double Barrel Gaming thoughts on the AAA G.I. Joe Snake Eyes games coming later. Yo, Joe. Well, I wish that we would have seen more, but yes, please sign me up for that Snake Eyes game. And it is Yojo June. If you are someone that collects the classified series, I am. I hope that they have a new HasLab because I've bought them all. And I think they're going to be shipping the Rattlers later this year. Yeah, I'm a nerd, folks. Sorry. I like G.I. Joe. I tell the story all the time, and I truly mean it. It was G.I. Joe in 1982 that led me on the path to become a cop. Honestly, protecting people, I know it's a cartoon, I know it's not real, but it led me to become a police officer, and I'm always going to love G.I. Joe for that. Terrence Hud Zero Hudson drops an additional very generous $2 super chat and says, also, we are not gamers, we are players. That's the good stuff right there. We play, especially thanks to Xbox and Xbox Game Pass, because if you're not playing Doom, you're doing it wrong. I'm telling you right now. But ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for hanging out with us for 90 plus minutes. We're going to get everyone out of here. A big thank you to all of the super chats, all of the channel member chats And of course, the gifted ones, Mrs. Boom and I are incredibly grateful for the support. Korkenstein, let's sell the brand, brother. What you got going on? Where could people follow you on social media? And is Game Pass Gumbo coming back in a big way? Maybe you could make some sort of Doom sandwich that is like with death ghost peppers or something. I don't know. It sounds interesting, but I mean, Doom is hell, and of course, ghost peppers are hot as hell. Sell the brand, brother.
Thank you again, Boom, as always, for letting me be here every Friday. I really appreciate it. Crispy, fuzzy, always solid takes. Love talking with you guys about it, and to the community. You guys here, like I always say it every time, you guys are the best. I had a lot of great conversation with you guys in the chat, and it's just such a healthy place here that you've curated to talk about and discuss something we all love, and that's games. So thank you guys for letting me do that every Friday. Yeah, for Game Pass Gumbo, yeah, we want to do something with Doom. I still have to edit a video. Probably today I'm going to work on it. I got the next 4 days off, so I'll probably end up for South of Midnight. They made like my co-host made like a shrimp etouffee.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, so I got to edit that down and compile it and do some voice work for it. As far as next one, I want to do something Doom. I'm thinking we might stream some stuff this weekend. Just to kind of, we're trying to get like a podcast going, but just with work and time and family and stuff, it's hard to get everyone together at the same time. But we are still working on a big end of our full year show. But we'll get more into that later. For Xbox Talks, we're currently talking maybe something for the altars might be coming up.
Oh, that's nice.
At least for this subreddit. I just saw that in our Discord right now. Nothing concrete though, just a FYI. It's just kind of up in the air right now, something we're trying to push, and we got to reach out to the developer to see if they want to come and do a cool AMA with us. And then the showcase, I'll be there. I'll be there with you, Boom, with Hargeet. Big ups to Hargeet, to Wagerman, to Sean
Ben Kenobi, Holly, they're unbelievable.
Dante
work.
Moody, all of them guys. You guys killed it, and I can't wait to see what you guys have in store for us during there. But that's pretty much it for me, guys. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, thank you for being here as always, and of course, providing that incredible list of not such good things going on for Sony when it comes to cancellations. Again, you can have an opinion, and opinions are good, but they also are like a-holes. Everyone has one, and they all stink, ladies and gentlemen. So there's that. Crispy Bomb, sell the brand, brother. Where could people find you on social media and get the crispy truth? And more importantly, brother, what else you got going on?
Crispy Bomb on X, Crispy Bomb 28 Xbox Live. You can find me wherever I show up on BoomStick's channel, because I tend to show up at least one time a week. But I've been on all the shows, and I have the open door policy, as we like to call it. So, I just say, hey, brother, I'm available. And then he says, okay, well, I have a full panel. Okay, I don't want to be on because I talk too much. But thank you all for being here, and we always appreciate it. And we'll see you next time.
Indeed. Absolutely, brother. Thanks so much for joining us. Super appreciate it. And last but no way least, the best bald head in the business, Fuzzy Belvedere. Let's sell the brand, brother. But again, obviously, we want to get people to subscribe to your YouTube channel. You want to add more content to it. But you are doubling down on getting the missus up and running with her channel, which, of course, is Fright Night with Ferocious Free, happening tonight at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Or is it? Because you look like you're away, so I'm not sure if you're doing it or you're not. But she does have an incredible horror-based podcast that you should check out. If you're into horror and you want, there are not many horror podcasts, at least not that I'm aware of, and this one is always fun. Obviously, her and Fuzzy do a great job of picking the movies and the topics, but you also have Silent Cypher and a few others that show up on a regular basis. And if you like Silent Cypher's deep, dark voice, that he sounds like the Emperor of Hell, then you're going to want to tune in for that. Sell the brand, brother. Where can people subscribe to both of your YouTube channels, and more importantly, follow both of you guys on social media?
Well, As always, greatly appreciate you having me on. Always a pleasure to be on here with you, Boom, Crispy, and Corkenstein. I love talking about video games a lot, and this is just like that perfect outlet for it. And love interacting with everybody in the chat. Thank you guys for joining us and interacting with us. We greatly appreciate it. By the way, hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already. We greatly appreciate the support. And for those that want to hear my rambles and rants on anything gaming related, you can follow me on pretty much all social media. Just do a search for Fuzzy Belvedere and you'll be able to find me. I put the link for my YouTube in the chat, and I'm about to put the one for my wife's channel in the chat as well.
Nice.
No show tonight, only because we are on the road, but we're going to have a lot to talk about when we get back to it next Friday. Was doing some filming stuff, not in the actual movie, but behind the scenes stuff for Crimson Harvest. So keep an eye out for that in like a year or so. But other than that, we'll be talking about Studio 666 with the Foo Fighters next Friday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. But as always, everybody enjoy gaming, enjoy your horror movies or games as well. Have a safe and happy weekend, and look forward to seeing you guys Monday for Xbox Lunch Break Special.
Yeah, and as you can imagine, I'm already working on the show. I think I already sent Fuzzy like 3 or 4 articles that were. So I work on the shows way in advance, and obviously we have breaking news. We will cover it, but I take this stuff ultra serious, and I do read a lot, which is what you got to do if you have 5 podcasts a week, sometimes 6 when we get breaking news. But ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it for us. A big thank you for everyone that tuned in. A lot of new names here. So, folks, I don't ask for much because we're givers. We're not takers. But we are 74 subscribers away from 16,000. And it would be super amazing to hit that number before we get to the June showcase. And we're grinding, and we're doing it the old-fashioned way, the old grassroots, mom and pop, small business way of doing things. And that's honest, it's earnest, and we're doing it by using fun, engaging topics. Now, granted, there are some of the topics that have some smoke, but I think we do it in a way that it's righteous. And you may not agree with it, but you got to call these companies out when you see it. And right now, Sony needs to be put on blast, because not only are they failing in the first-party, single-player, story-driven games that made them famous, they're failing pretty much in everything they do outside of selling a console. And that's not that big of a deal. But we'll see what happens with Sony. I know leadership has changed, and it will continue to change. And maybe, and again, I never want to see anyone lose their job, but I think Herman Host is going to get left holding the bag with this one. But we will see. But again, folks, thank you so much for tuning in. And of course, I'm going to close out the show with something that's incredibly important to me. Hopefully one day, ladies and gentlemen, it'll be important to you. And that's something that might. Oh, wait a second. We actually had a super chat pop in here from a good friend of the program. Let's just get that here. We also have Demon Time Reezy drops a very generous $2 super chat and says, a G.I. Joe game with hypercharged art style. Boom. Yes, I will take that. If you didn't know, anyone that's a G.I. Joe fan, real quick before I do my spiel and get us out of here, there is a side-scrolling beat-em-up Final Fight-esque G.I. Joe game that quietly came out. Was it this year? Earlier this year. I have it. I haven't beaten it yet. It's amazing. So if you like G.I. Joe, if you're an old-school cat like me, and you like side-scrolling beat-em-ups, that you should go check it out. It's not the Rat. Is it the Wrath of Cobra? It might be the Wrath of Cobra, but its art style is really, really good. And again, it has Duke, it has Roblox, Scarlet, Snake Eyes, Gun Ho is another selectable character. I think there's like 8 GI Joes in there that you can play. But yeah, go check that out. Thank you, Dave Reezy, for that. Super appreciate it. And again, folks, if you appreciate it, the work that we do here, hit the like button, subscribe. And I will start again. If you, something that my dad taught us, I think is incredibly important to the way the world is now. Treat others how you want to be treated. And also, it doesn't cost anything, ladies and gentlemen, to be nice. You live by those rules, son. I can guarantee you're going to have an awesome day. So take care, everyone. We'll see you next week on the newest episode of Breakfast with Boom.